Welcome. You have found the show we call Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? This is a podcast for men, and on this show, we will hear real-life stories from men about how they have navigated the complexities of being a man in this modern day. We are going to look at the boys don't cry way of thinking and how that has influenced them and how they have risen above societal pressures to be true to themselves. The focus of this show is men's real-world experiences, not just ideas and theories. I hope that you will learn from what they have discovered and use it in your life as well. Let's get into today's show. Hello, another episode of Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? I'm Brandon Archer, and today I have with me Jason Schnitzer. Jason I met in online world because that's where you seem to meet a lot of people this day and age. But there was a synergy, so we're like, hey, you want to do this podcast thing? And we're like, hell yeah, let's do it. So Jason, welcome. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't you just give us the 30-second intro to who you are and what you do and where you are. Say where you are in the world too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm Jason Schnitzer. I'm 37. I'm also a fellow men's coach located in beautiful Southern California, Orange County. Been doing this for a little while now. I'm a husband of 10 years and I've got a 15-month-old boy.
Nice. Dadhood. How's that changed your life?
Man, how hasn't it changed my life is the better question. Because and it's really what catalysted me onto the path of like going deep into this work. Just because I had found a way out of or avoiding doing this type of work my entire life, because it's like, it's just me, whatever excuse I came up with. And then all of a sudden he came along, and then it's like, oh, now there's somebody always watching. And so there really isn't a good reason or a good excuse to not, in a way, hold myself accountable and, start taking responsibility and start really looking in the mirror at the things that I have been avoiding for decades.
Yeah, a little set of eyes looking at you going, what are you going to do next, Dad?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really hits you like because he just started talking and saying words, and it's like, wait a second, how do you know like vroom vroom in the car and like leaving bye bye and all these things that like you didn't teach him to do, and he just kind of like naturally picked up on. I'm like, oh yeah, I mean that everybody's told me like they're watching, they're learning. Just because they're not talking doesn't mean that they're not like trying to make sense of what's going on. And so like that was like a huge, and I knew that, but it didn't really hit me until like he started talking about the things. I'm like, oh wow, now it's time to tighten up even more.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to explain to somebody that doesn't have kids, hey?
Yeah, because plenty of people tried to explain it to me. I'm like, yeah, I get it. And I even had friends leading up when my wife was pregnant. One in particular that was like, bro, your world's about to change. I'm like, yeah, sure. We've been waiting a long time with this. We're set. We planned as much as we could possibly plan, all the things, the support, etc. But there are some things that you don't learn until you're actually on the job. And that is so freaking true with parenthood.
What's one of those things you mentioned that you've been avoiding doing for decades?
One of. Well, taking responsibility for how I show up in my marriage in the times when things are difficult. And it's like, call it triggers or my reactions. and, in ways that don't match the type of person, the type of man that I want to be, and really reflect on like, where did that come from? It's like, why is that here? Like, what's going on there? And starting to like really understand that so that like I can actively in the moment start to notice that better, and therefore take a pause and choose differently. Going back to my son is now watching everything.
Yeah. How often do you catch yourself, and how often does it slip?
I don't know that I necessarily keep track to the time, but it's definitely happening less. And when it does happen, I think the most important part about it is that I'm able to take responsibility for it. I'm able to like calm down. I'm able to, see things from my wife's perspective to the degree where it's like, oh yeah, I see where the little boy showed up there and said this thing and took it this way, and why I would take it that way. Take responsibility for that, and then repair the rupture that was created by that. Yeah. And leaning into that was one of the harder things because, you know, as much as you think you've healed, it's like you have those situations, and then it's like it's easy for shame to come up. And it's easy, to have things happen and then feel bad about them, and instead of and stopping the shame spiral and having the grace for yourself, like, oh yeah, I'm human, this is normal. And what's most important is for me to take responsibility and repair whatever just happened.
Has your wife noticed a shift?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny because some people say, like, you can't change people, which to a degree is true. But when you change how you show up and how you react over time, the people in your life start to like get re-educated because you've changed the rules basically as to like how you respond. So it's like, yeah, now all of a sudden, instead of shutting down because like I'm gonna follow her around trying to win the argument, trying to make her understand, or trying to have her like see it, if I just explain it one more time, this time she'll get it. Like she knows, like, oh, Jason's gonna like sit there and like hear my point of view. He's gonna be able to articulate that back to me, make me feel safe to be able to feel however it is that I want to feel. He's not going to try to change my reaction to the situation. He's going to validate those feelings. And then eventually, maybe we'll get into some sort of like problem solving discussion to where, you know, usually it's a conflict that keeps happening that we can maybe resolve ultimately, and then develop some sort of shorthand communication the next time it comes up. It's like, oh, here's that thing again. So yeah, she has definitely noticed.
How are you going to evolve it now? I'm curious.
How am I gonna evolve it?
Evolve
Mm,
that process. What's next?
yeah, I think it's a never ending process of being able to recognize when old patterns start to come up, and then that's going to happen like in intimate relationships. Like that's what relationships do. Um, and it's like part of this whole healing process. It's not necessarily being on your own. It's like getting into a relationship and then watching the other person just push all the buttons that you
All the buttons.
that
Yeah.
you thought you healed.
Oh, dude, I get it. Yeah, I shared just before we started. I'm having a bit of a thing, and I'm learning so much from you right now because when you're in the situation, it can be really hard to see what's going on, and just hearing your your process and how you navigate, it's just a reminder for me. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't do that yesterday. Damn. But like you said, it's that grace to be like, yep,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
mistake, human, stand up, repair.
yeah.
How, what did you do before this, like, Did you used to just argue with her? You kind of indicated.
Yeah. I mean, I gave a pretty in-depth description, but yeah,
Yeah.
basically, I would be so defensive and so hurt by not feeling understood that I wouldn't spend any time being able to like sit with her side of the
Yeah.
story. It would just be about me. And, so I would do things like raise my voice. I would do things like she would need space and I would follow her around the house, insisting that, my point of view or maybe trying to explain it a different way. And it would never work. But in the moment, it felt so like, no, it's gonna work this time.
Yeah.
And looking back now, knowing what I know and the skills that I've developed, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I can laugh now because I've gotten past the part of like, of that shame, you know,
Yeah.
gosh, that just like, it feels like you're in that deep hole. It's like, how could I ever like change this? How could I ever be different? And it's like, once you get past that gap, it's like all of a sudden you can get to a place of like laughing at yourself in a way.
Totally.
Yeah.
What were you like when you're growing up? What were you modeled on how to handle conflict?
Oh man, it makes perfect sense, of course, which usually does, but it was just constant rupture with no repair. And I saw that with my mom and my dad, who eventually got divorced, and like every relationship that I'd ever been in, I was the more anxiously attached person. Where it's like if there was a rupture, it was like, oh man, like is is the relationship over? So it's like I never really grew to trust that, oh, ruptures are normal. In fact, they're really healthy. And in a rupture, it's like you have another person that loves you, that's ready to listen to your side, validate your experience, like your emotions, everything that comes up for you, and then be able to like share theirs. And then you like have conflict resolution. So I got zero of that until I was like 35 or
Yeah.
something like
And you're like, damn it, I could have used this 20 years
that.
ago.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So I remember when I was seeing a somatic therapist, which is
Mm.
magic. If nobody's
Hmm.
been to one, I
Hmm.
strongly suggest it. And she said to me, it was a pivot point in kind of what you're sharing, is the human experience is breaking connection and reconnecting. And I'm like, God damn,
Mm.
put a different light on everything because I was anxiously attached too. So I can relate to that. Like, is it over? Is it over? I'm like, no, there's just the boat's just a little rocky. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Which is normal when you're out in the ocean, by the way.
Totally.
And it's like,
How?
sorry, go ahead.
No, you can share, man.
Oh, I was just thinking, it's like, I think the hardest part, especially for dudes, is like it brings up like going on your somatic experiencing, it brings up so many like physical sensations and feelings and emotions and things that like we never have had any practice navigating through. In fact, we're like usually told that like it's wrong for you to feel certain ways or you shouldn't be
Yes.
feeling that way, or emotions are for babies or for girls. And we're stuck with them regardless of what people told us like we should or shouldn't feel. So not only are we having these struggles in like, in this case, like my most intimate relationship, but all of the emotions and feelings that come along for the ride, it's like it's almost like you're alone in them because haven't had you weren't taught how to navigate them, you weren't taught how to deal with them. And then it's like you think, and again, it goes back to like why I really feel like a lot of men just get stuck in this shame. And it's like, man, what if it was just totally normal? What if your experience made perfect sense? And it was like that aha. And like you said, that feeling of like, oh, what if I can disconnect and reconnect? What if that's the way? And all of a sudden it's like weight lifts off your chest. And like you actually learn, it's like that's the scariest part. It's like the boogeyman under your bed or in the closet. It's like when you finally shine the light on it, it's like, oh, that's just my teddy bear.
Yeah, good analogy. How I'm so like before we did this, I didn't know you had an anxious attachment. If you look
Mm.
back to your childhood, can you see with what you know now, like kind of how that started?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was, and like, if I'm being honest, I'm more disorganized
Hmm.
because like there are parts of me that are very avoidant. And yeah, I can definitely connect the dots. My mom was not emotionally available. So it's like I wasn't sure if I could share. And if I shared, it wasn't usually received well. So there was, and then there would be times when like sharing wouldn't be safe at all. So it'd be like, oh, it was very like well, I guess in the, you know, attachment world, secure, if you will, relationship with regards to like sharing what was really going on for me. So it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like I put up this front of what I think people wanted to see, which again, sure it's like that's a recipe for people pleasing and being a nice guy.
Yeah. But it's funny. I don't think I think it's starting to get talked about more, men's relationship with their mothers and how that actually affects their, there's so much out there in in the men's workspace or relationships. You got to be more
Yeah,
masculine and everybody focuses on that. It's like, wait a minute. How about we go back to how we learned about our emotions first, which was our mom.
yeah,
And if you're not looking at that, not a lot of the other work actually does anything for you. So, how many guys out there do you come across that are anxiously attached and maybe don't even understand what that is?
well, you're either usually, I mean,
It's a spectrum, yeah.
it's a
But
spectrum. There's not too many people I run into that are like securely attached, right? That are just
yeah,
like, my childhood was awesome. I
yeah,
love my parents. I could tell them everything. It was super safe to feel and express and to cry and to be angry, to be sad, and all the things. So it's like, yeah, usually guys are super avoidant. So it's like, don't want to talk about anything. Or it's like, that people pleaser nice guy, it's like what does this person want to hear versus like what am I authentically feeling, and worried about if I say the wrong thing, like how is this going to land for somebody. And it's like you said, it all goes back to the root, which is like our first relationship, which is typically mom. And we develop the working model of the world on like what is safe and what is dangerous, like how we feel, the actions that we take. If we cry out and we're sad, is it okay to cry? Does your mom come and nurture you? Does she leave you alone? Does she tell you, hey, don't cry? And that all plays into like it's like a trajectory of like all of a sudden you're in a situation when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, and it's the same emotion that comes up when you were 6 months old, and you have a similar reaction to like what was allowed then.
yeah. God, man, it's like we have the language and understanding for it, and I know I've had other guests where we touch on this, but this is a lot deeper. Do you still catch yourself reverting to that?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like, and that's the thing. It's like those parts of me I know are never going to go away. And it's just that, and that going back to like how often it's the practice of, the whole idea of self awareness, being present, or being able to somatically experience like those sensations that come up. The more you're able to actually navigate them, and that's like you normalize them, right? It's like, oh my gosh, it's a teddy bear under my bed, not the boogeyman. It's like, oh, these feelings are normal. Cool. And then you start noticing. with self-awareness, like, oh, wow, that same tension in my chest or in my shoulders or the lump in my throat or the pit in my stomach comes up like three, four, five, 6 times a day. And in these situations, right? And like once you're able to start like noticing, it's like you're able to start like organizing yourself in a way where it's like, oh, that comes up then. It's like, oof, man, that feeling's really familiar. It's like, wow, I felt that way for a long time. And it's like, you start to notice, like, oh, wow, my reactions when I'm 37, it feels like I'm like 8 right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, or like I'm 16. And it's like, no wonder I'm yelling because I feel like a 16-year-old, right?
Yeah, except we have no model of what like a 35-year-old or 45-year-old is
Yeah.
supposed to, how they're supposed to handle that
Mm,
emotional
mm,
wave.
mm-hmm.
What do you use like personally to be more self-aware? Do you have any daily practice you do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I always try to sit with myself for 5 to 10 minutes and, ask myself questions. It's like, is there any part of me that's like presenting right now that needs attention? Right. And then just sit there and listen. And it's like, you'd be surprised. Like if you've never done it, maybe this sounds weird to some people, but you'd be surprised what voice talks back to you when you actually ask yourself certain questions. And I will
Totally.
say, beware. Careful what you ask for, as they say.
Yeah, I give guys like some journal prompts to like
Hmm.
same thing, some specific ones to like, hey, let's see if we can get an answer from your subconscious. And then
Yeah.
I use inner child work, and that usually
Hmm.
blows their mind. They're like, wow, I like cried. Like he answered back. I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Been there the
He
whole
needs you,
time,
man.
dude.
He needs you.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like I use similar modalities in my work, and one of the ways I used to describe it, it's like when somebody does connect with that inner child, and it's like that feeling or physical sensation or whatever it is, it's like, yeah, man, it's like think about every time that physical sensation comes up, it's like a little, whatever age it is, just tugging on your arm, tugging on your arm and tugging on your arm. And it's like that's your job to turn towards that emotion from now on, and your responsibility to take that on and not his.
How long do you think it takes a person to go from anxious attachment to secure? Not that you can be fully secure. Like, let me just
Mm,
preface that.
yeah. No, I mean that's a tough question to ask just because like it super depends on context. And part of, like you said, part of secure attachment is being anxiously attached because guess what happens when your securely attached person leaves? It's like there's anxiousness that comes up. Um, so I'm not sure if I can put an exact number on it, but like what you basically want to focus on is like you need to give your body experiences of secure attachment moving forward. In other words, like there's a situation that happens where your anxiously attached parts come up and you have an experience with a safe person that gives a new outcome while still experiencing those feelings. And then you prove to your system over time like, oh, maybe I don't have to be like protective about this certain situation anymore. When you go from like infidelity into a secure relationship, like there's going to be a period of time probably where, with healthy communication with your partner, you can voice like, hey, just so you know, I'm anxious about this because of this. And a secure partner is going to turn towards that, we'll call it a trigger in those situations and be able to help you tend to that. So eventually, over time, you give yourself enough proof to be like, oh, I can trust this person again. Not that anxious feeling is ever really going to go away, right?
Yeah.
But like having the tools to understand like it's there for a good reason, to be able to sit with it and like take from the wisdom of whatever it is that it's trying to like keep you safe from, and then choose to be able to like be in relationship from a different place. Because the thing about like being anxiously attached or avoidant attached or like anxious in general is like a lot of times we self actualize in that place. So, in other words, it's like we're feeling anxious about this thing. So, we don't want this bad thing to happen. So, we're going to do anxious stuff about it. But in turn, our anxious choices, like our partner cheating or our partner leaving or whatever it is, we act from that anxious energy. It's like we end up self actualizing our biggest fear when instead of it's just like turning toward the anxiousness and like, what is this here to like protect me from? Like, what's the wisdom here that it's trying to give me? Like, what did I need at the time when I was so anxious that I'm not getting right now, and be able to
Yeah.
give myself that. And that way you don't choose from that and you're able to choose from a different place so that like you don't take a secure, trustworthy person and turn it into your worst nightmare.
I
uh,
think, you know, coming from anxiousness to somebody described me as secure, which was like, that was flattering. It's like, wow,
mm,
I've had to work really fucking hard to do that. But
mm,
I think for men listening that are like, wow, I feel that way, I think you actually have a superpower. I actually think I would
yes.
personally rather be going from anxious to secure than avoidant and the other
Yeah.
way. I think
Yeah.
that's harder, I feel, for those men because our feelings are like on the surface.
Yes.
And to learn to navigate those, I think I'm very grateful for my path in that. But I asked about the time frame because when I discovered this a long time ago, somebody said this is going to take 7 years for you to deal with, and I'm like,
Oh, wow.
fuck off.
Yeah.
And they're very knowledgeable and they're very in this space. This is what they do, and she came
Mm,
from that space too. So I kind of it carried a lot of weight.
yeah, that makes
Interestingly
sense.
enough, guess where I am? I'm at about year 7, and I'm like,
Mhm.
looking back, I'm like, yeah, she wasn't wrong. And
Mm,
I just share that because there is, for guys listening, like, you can still have a great life in between. Like, you can't not do that work. You're not serving yourself or your kids or your partner or yourself. Like, you're robbing yourself of a really beautiful experience, in my opinion. What is the thing as your son gets older? Like, do you currently have a focus that you're like, okay, from now to age 5, I'm going to really concentrate on this?
um, you know, the only thing I'm trying to focus on is like how I'm showing up. And it's like diving deeper into like we were just talking about. It's like you asked, it's like, hey, do you still have those like young parts show up? Do you still have those like you get back like in those patterns again? It's like, dude, if you want to pick two relationships where that shit is going to come up, it's your intimate relationships and it's having a kid.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a constant checking in of like who's here right now, like how am I showing up, like when my son cries, like when he gets upset, like what are my reactions, and being able to like really build in a pause and like come from a more grounded place instead of like reacting out of that like trigger or like whatever emotion is presenting. And it's like I just want to I don't necessarily have any specifics other than being as aware of like as I can of like how I'm showing up and why I'm showing up. And it's like I'm trying to basically reparent myself as my son is growing up so that he hasn't like he can skip like going through all the work that I'm going through.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It makes total sense. My son turns 19 in 2 weeks, and
Mm,
he's lived with me for 3 years now, and he very much has changed. He expected me to, be critical all the time, and to watch him like shift to like trusting me that he can just show up the way he needs to has
yeah.
been like so fulfilling for me because I'm like, and I just broke the generational pattern.
Nice. Now, did that take 7 years, or how long did that take?
Well, I had a heart attack 8 years ago.
Mm,
And at that point, yeah, I really realized how I was showing up for my kids wasn't what I wanted.
mm,
And I worked really hard from there. Like, okay, they basically never got yelled at after that point.
yeah.
Did
Wow.
did this
Cool.
tension we're talking about come up?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And I started handling it different
Hmm.
to where I am today. And I'm pleased with how I handle both my kids now. And is
That's
it
awesome.
perfect? No. Does it give them a different foundation than you and I had? Hell yeah, it does.
Yeah. That's amazing. And like just what you said, it's like there is no such thing as being a perfect parent.
Doesn't
And
exist.
it's never too late. It's like the only time that it's too late is when you're dead.
Fully agree. If you've got adult children, it's still not too late.
Still not too late.
I strongly, strongly believe that. And I think that's important for guys to hear because it is a driver for a lot of us. Like, oh shit, I got a kid now.
Yeah.
What now? I gotta grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if
100%.
you're in your 50s and your kids are in your 20s or 30s, do it. It's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. And hey, do you mind if I unpack a little bit? You had mentioned like anxiously attached versus avoidant and like
Yeah.
why it might be easier. Because
Yeah,
like
man.
it makes sense because like as like more anxiously attached, it's like we feel everything. And it's like,
Yes.
what was that? What was that feeling? And you're very aware of that feeling. And what's like, so you are aware of the sensations, you just don't know what they are, which like makes step one easier for anxiously attached person, which is actually feeling the feelings. Whereas like, yeah, avoidance, like dudes that just shut down, it's like that feeling can be so much. It's like that's why we shut down or that's why we avoid. So like just getting to step one can seem like a really, really big task. And it can seem like you're opening Pandora's box because for a lot of times, like you've spent so long avoiding those feelings. And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think either way, I think the feelings they can come flooding, right? Doesn't
Yes,
matter if you're coming from anxious or avoidant.
for
And I
sure.
do think that can be scary. And I think guys shouldn't try that alone.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Like
yeah,
you need somebody by your side, a man. I'm being very fucking specific with this. It can't be your
yeah,
partner. She will have empathy for you on that journey,
yeah,
but she's not the one to lean on.
yeah. Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's like, I think there's mixed messages about, the idea of never share with your wife versus share everything with your wife. And it's like, if you share anything, it's like that's the beginning to the end. And it's like, the guys that I see talking about that, it's like that just tells me that they've had so many bad experiences of just like more or less vomiting all their emotions out in a
Yeah.
disorganized manner that it has turned off every woman that they've ever been with, which makes sense. When you're not able to articulate what's going on inside of you, why it's there, and what you're going to do about it, it's like, what is that to your woman? It's like, that's terrifying. So it's like, as the man, it's like, modern or not even modern, but like gender roles, it's like it's our job to lead the family, lead the relationship. But when you can understand what's going on inside of you and articulate it in a way where it's like, yeah, I'm feeling this. This is why I'm feeling this. And this is what I'm going to do about it. Like she can look at you with like trust, feel safe, like, wow, that dude knows what's going on inside of him and has a plan to do that with, or has a plan to execute it. It's like 100% you want to do it with another dude, like to get that organization
Yeah.
with another dude that knows how to help you along the way.
Yeah. It's imperative. You can't do it solo. That doesn't work either. I've tried that.
Yeah.
I tried leaning on women. That doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's an important step. And circling back to you saying like what to share with your woman, that is so confusing, right? Like I know when
Mm.
I was, got married, it's like, oh, she's just everything. She can handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
No, 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 no. The
Yeah.
minute I like had men in my life to just share how I was feeling, my romantic relationship shifted almost
Oh yeah.
immediately.
Oh yeah.
Because you show up and you're like, hey, I'm good. Like
Yeah.
I'm a little more clear emotionally. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need you to help me carry all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found the magic in how to share is like what you said. It's like, hey, this thing's going on. Just want you to know. Probably feeling a little off today. It's probably the
Yeah.
energy you can feel, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm good. I got it.
Yeah.
That's all they need to hear.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Because here's the thing. I mean, you just said it, Brandon. It's like whether you say it or not, they can feel it.
Yeah.
It's like women are magical creatures, and their intuition is, I mean, that's just the feminine, dude. It's intuition. And if you're married or in a relationship with a feminine woman, she is going to be so in tune with the way that you talk, your tone of
Yeah.
voice, your mood, the way you say something, the way you move. So whether or not you know it, it's like you're telling her without telling her.
Yeah. So you might as well learn what's going on so you can just own it. Yeah. They're the barometer. They know. Why try to hide it? You
Yes.
can't hide it. And I know
Yeah.
every time I try to hide it, it just bites me in the ass, man.
So true, dude. Yeah. No truer words were spoken. It's like the truth sets you free.
Yeah. And it's just, I know we've said it once, but it's how you share. You've got to share something. Even if it's like, I feel off today, I'm not sure what it is. I just
Yeah.
want you to know. That's literally enough. It doesn't have to be this big explanation of what's going on internally, especially
Mm-hmm.
as a man starts his journey. You're not going to know.
Mm-hmm.
These are all tips I wish I'd known.
Yeah.
It's like just
No, that's for
own
sure.
that you feel off. Just own that you feel off. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. And it's like, and it's almost better that you name it, like we've said, because it's like it's already the undertones of, how you're presenting yourself is already going to be a felt sense to her. So when you name it, there's like a sense of relief that happens with your partner where it's just like, oh, okay, like I figured that, I felt that. She might not say that to you, but it's like that's how the effect is going to be on her body for sure.
What would you say to a guy I'm like that says, yeah, but she treats me like crap every time I share?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably how you share it, I would think. Um, because, well, it's a little complicated because it's like, what's her stuff too, and like what else has transpired in the relationship. Um, and also, it matters like when you share, right? Going back to like the idea of not only how you share, but like some people have this, I call it like fantasy that like if my partner really loves me, I should be able to share anything anytime, right? Which is just not the case. Like we have different like peaks and balances with our energy, with things on our mind, etc. And it's like one of the best things that I've ever done is like for one, erased that fantasy out of my mind. And number two, just like ask, hey, are you in a place where you can hear me right now? I've got something that's like bothering me and I really need a sounding board, or I just need to like vent it out. Even if it's just like to really let something out, it's like we want our partners to be able to like have a heads up, like, hey, there's some shit that's going to be flying at you right here. And it's
Yeah.
like hard for me. So they can put themselves in a headspace. And whether that's that moment or like later in the evening, it's like it's really important to get like more or less consent to share. Because it's like the problem with not doing that is a lot of times like we it's hard to share a lot of times for guys, right? So what's our biggest fear? Like our feelings being rejected, that shame like of like having these feelings being like reaffirmed. So like what happens when we just like blot it out, a lot of times it doesn't get received how we're hoping for it to receive, which again, just like that anxious like self-actualization story, that can be the same thing when we go to share feelings because it feels so big for us, right? It's like, oh my God, how's she going to receive this? How's she going to receive this? How's she going to receive this? It's going to be bad. This is hard. This is really uncomfortable. Blah, here we go. And then she's like, ugh, I don't like that.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I agree with you. And here's a couple things that for me have become really important is you got to decide how you want to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be dependent on how she reacts.
Mm-hmm.
And how one way I've gotten through that and even waiting for space, right? It's like, hey, I got something I want to share is that 8-year-old, 5-year-old self or whatever is a modality I use personally. And with my
Mm-hmm.
clients, it's like, okay, he's anxious as fuck right now. And
Mm-hmm.
take time, close my eyes and imagine that little guy crawling up in my lap and just like,
Yeah.
hey buddy, it's okay. I got you. Got you right now.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you're the one that you can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
It's
100%.
great to have a secure partner help you through moving from anxious to secure or just
Yep.
navigating it. End of the day, you can do it. You
Yeah.
can do it. Because if you're single and you don't have a partner, you can have secure male relationships in your life that can 100% help you. End of the
For
day,
sure.
just that visual of that 5-year-old climbing up in your lap and going, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, buddy, you're upset. No problem. What do you need? You
Mm-hmm.
can learn that skill and it's a game changer.
Dude, self-validation, reparenting, self-parenting. That I mean, that's what this work is. It's like it's the relationship with yourself. And it's like once you rewire the relationship with yourself, and then all of a sudden, like all your little 5, 8, 12, 18-year old parts of you like really trust like, oh fuck, Jason's got this. Oh, Brandon's
Yeah.
got this shit. It's like that's a game changer. And like that is truly what changes all your relationships with everybody
Yeah.
else is the one with yourself.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a couple closing questions soon, but I want to share just on this journey of healing, going from anxious to not, you
Mm-hmm.
still trip. Like
Oh yeah.
I had a thing just happened to me yesterday. I got
Mm-hmm.
angry. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a problem with showing anger,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely followed it down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And now I got to repair.
Yeah.
And I don't have a choice other than to repair because that's how I want to live, right? And
Yeah.
am I going to get rejected? Am I going to get shut down? Am I going to have to, air quotes, face the music because
Mm-hmm.
she has feelings that she needs to share? Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah, dude.
I won't
100%.
die, even though
No.
sometimes my body's like, avoid that at all costs, avoid that at all costs.
It's so
It's not
true, man.
real.
So true. And then, yeah, that's why I got this hat. It's like face
Yeah.
the music, face the storm. It's like that's what it can feel like, dude. Is like emotions. It's like, a guy that is basically my mentor likes to bring up a lot is like, man, there are so many men that go out on the battlefield. Like we train men to go fight in wars. And then we come back and like, unfortunately we lose more servicemen to suicide than we do actual combat now. And it
Hmm.
kind of just goes to show you, it's like, what's harder, like going in and facing actual death or being back and like sitting with yourself and the emotions that are so difficult to navigate. So it's, yeah, man.
This is modern day courage. This
Yeah,
is
dude.
like what, in my opinion, defines a modern day man is to have the courage to face this stuff.
Yeah, man. All the above. It's just like, yeah, you got to have both. It's like, yeah, cool. Like you can do whatever you do physically, earn whatever you earn financially, that's all great. But if you're missing this component anymore now, it's like at the rate at which women have grown just in the last, like, even 20 years, it's just been like, we're just being outpaced like
Oh
crazy. And
man,
it's so
we're
clear.
easily 2 generations behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, I got 2 questions for you.
Okay.
What message do you have for a previous version of yourself?
You make perfect sense, dude. Everything that you're going through is normal. And the feelings that you have, like, yeah, they just make sense. And there's nothing wrong with you.
That's rad. What message do you have for men listening?
Dude, you are not alone. Stop trying to do it by yourself. And it's like, yeah, I know you're smart. I know you're tough. I know lone wolfing is like, it seems like such a, I don't know, a divine journey. But it's like, as smart as you are, as tough as you are, as awesome as you are, you're also stuck right where you are because of you. So stop doing it alone. Reach out. There are lots of dudes. Like, this isn't like high school, right? It's not like the locker room where it's like a bunch of dudes like making you prove yourself. It's like, no, dude, this is like, there's good men out there that are just like ready to welcome you with open arms, make sense of your story so you can make sense of you, get out of this shame cycle that you're in, and like start fucking living your life how you want to live it, dude.
Yeah, man, that's golden. Okay, Jason, where do people find you?
Yeah, Instagram is my main spot. Jason Schnitzer Coaching.
Cool. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. Man, this was rad. I love not knowing where these conversations are going to go. It's probably my favorite thing about recording this show is I really don't know what's going to happen, but that was super impactful. I think guys are going to get a ton of value out of it today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, man, dude. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for taking the time to be here today. I honestly hope you found something you can use in your life. And I hope you found some relief in knowing that you're not the only one with challenges. We can be very isolated as men. If you don't have support in your life, please reach out to someone. It's okay to need help. It doesn't mean that you're less of a man. In fact, it takes a courageous man to know when it's time to ask for guidance. Until next time, brother.